The Europe of the late 18th and early 19th centuries was a whirlwind of change, a theater of revolutions and shifting power that reshaped monarchies and empires alike. From the ashes of feudal hierarchies rose revolutionary ideals, and from the chaos of war emerged new leaders and kingdoms. It was a time when the fate of nations often rested on the shoulders of rulers. But hidden behind the scenes, quieter figures played pivotal roles in shaping history. One such figure was Marie-Amélie de Bourbon, Queen Consort of France, whose influence on her family, particularly her husband Louis-Philippe I and their children, would ripple through the pages of French history. Born on April 26, 1782, in the sunlit kingdom of Naples, Marie-Amélie was the daughter of Ferdinand, the one of the two Sicilies, and Maria Carolina of Austria. Her lineage was as illustrious as it was complex. She was a direct descendant of the House of Bourbon, a family deeply entwined with the destinies of European monarchies. Yet, her early years were marked not by the glamour of court life, but by the specter of revolution. Her aunt, Queen Marie Antoinette of France, met her tragic fate on the guillotine during the French Revolution, a trauma that would cast a long shadow over Marie-Amélie's upbringing. The upheavals of the Napoleonic Wars further forced her family into exile, imprinting upon her a sense of resilience and a cautious understanding of power. As a young woman, Marie-Amélie embodied the virtues of grace, piety, and composure, traits that would later define her role as queen. But her life was far from a simple royal fairy tale. The Bourbon family's precarious position during Napoleon's reign and the tumult of post-revolutionary Europe meant that survival required not just political acumen but also personal strength. Amid this backdrop, Marie-Amélie met Louis-Philippe d'Orléans, a man whose fortunes, like her own, were deeply tied to the turbulence of the age. Louis-Philippe, a descendant of the House of Orleans, had grown up witnessing the collapse of the French monarchy and the rise of revolutionary fervor. His family was forced into exile, and his youth was spent wandering across Europe, forging a pragmatic worldview shaped by the fragility of royal power. When Marie-Amélie and Louis-Philippe's paths crossed, it was not merely a union of two noble houses, but a meeting of two kindred spirits forged by shared experiences of loss, exile, and an unyielding hope for restoration. Their marriage in 1809 was more than a personal alliance. It was a partnership steeped in shared ideals and mutual respect. While Louis-Philippe harbored ambitions to restore his family's influence, Marie-Amélie offered him the steadying force of her character, becoming his confidant and moral compass. Together, they navigated the shifting sands of post-Napoleonic Europe, a continent yearning for stability yet deeply divided by the echoes of revolution. When Louis-Philippe ascended to the throne in 1830, following the July Revolution, it was as the citizen king of a newly minted constitutional monarchy. His rise marked a departure from the absolutist tendencies of previous French monarchs, and his rule aimed to bridge the divide between the old order and the new liberal ideals. But ruling in such a politically charged environment was no easy task. The July Monarchy was constantly beset by challenges: economic unrest, political opposition, and the enduring tension between tradition and progress. In this turbulent landscape, Marie-Amélie's influence became a quiet yet indispensable force. As queen, Marie-Amélie refrained from overt displays of power, yet her role was far from passive. She acted as a moral and emotional anchor for her husband, tempering his decisions with her unerring sense of duty and virtue. Her counsel, often delivered in private, was instrumental in maintaining the monarchy's image of moderation and respectability. While Louis-Philippe managed the intricacies of governance, Marie-Amélie devoted herself to fostering unity within the royal family and upholding the values that would define their reign. Beyond her immediate family, Marie-Amélie's impact extended to the French people through her patronage of charitable endeavors and the arts. She was deeply committed to alleviating the struggles of the poor, supporting institutions such as hospitals, orphanages, and schools. Her philanthropic efforts were not merely symbolic gestures of royal benevolence. They were genuine acts of compassion that endeared her to many. To her, queenship was not an entitlement, but a responsibility to lead by example. Yet, the challenges of her position were relentless. The political unrest that simmered beneath the surface of the July Monarchy would eventually boil over, culminating in the Revolution of 1848. Faced with insurmountable pressure, Louis-Philippe abdicated, and the royal family fled into exile once more. For Marie-Amélie, it was a moment of profound sorrow, a bitter reminder of the impermanence of power. But even in exile, she remained a steadfast presence, guiding her family through their loss with the same grace and fortitude that had defined her entire life. The story of Marie-Amélie de Bourbon is not one of grandiose speeches or dramatic gestures, but of quiet resilience and enduring influence. Her life offers a window into an era of profound transformation, where the fate of monarchies hung in the balance and the values of tradition and progress clashed in a battle for the soul of nations. Through her unwavering faith, dedication to family, and commitment to the welfare of her people, Marie-Amélie left a legacy that transcended her time as queen. It is a legacy not of conquest or domination, but of compassion, wisdom, and the quiet strength that shapes history from behind the scenes. As we delve deeper into the chapters of her life, we uncover not just the story of a queen, but of a woman whose life encapsulated the hopes and struggles of an age. Marie-Amélie's journey from a princess of Naples to the exiled matriarch of the Orleans dynasty is a testament to the enduring power of character in the face of adversity, a power that, though often unseen, leaves an indelible mark on the course of history. Marie-Amélie de Bourbon's early years unfolded in a Europe teetering on the edge of monumental change. Born in 1782 at the royal palace of Caserta, near Naples, she entered a world of privilege that seemed, at first glance, impervious to the storms brewing across the continent. Her father, Ferdinand, the one of the two Sicilies, ruled over a vast and prosperous kingdom, while her mother, Maria Carolina of Austria, was a formidable political force in her own right. The royal family was steeped in centuries of tradition, their lineage connecting them to nearly every major European dynasty. Yet, the forces of revolution, ignited in faraway France, would soon encroach upon their seemingly unshakable world. As a child, Marie-Amélie was shaped by her mother's strong personality and intellect. Maria Carolina, the sister of Marie Antoinette, carried the weight of their family's legacy with fierce determination. She was a shrewd political operator, wielding influence in the court and beyond, and was deeply committed to preserving the old order. Her fervent opposition to revolutionary ideals and the Napoleonic threat shaped the environment in which Marie-Amélie grew up, instilling in her a sense of duty, loyalty, and caution. These traits would serve her well as she navigated the tumultuous events of her life. Marie-Amélie's childhood was also enriched by a classical education befitting a princess of her status. She was tutored in languages, history, and the arts, while her Catholic faith was nurtured with equal care. From an early age, she exhibited a quiet intelligence and a natural grace that set her apart. Unlike some of her more impulsive royal contemporaries, she demonstrated a remarkable capacity for introspection and emotional resilience. Her world, however, was not confined to the halls of the royal palace. The dramatic political changes of the late 18th century ensured that she would come to understand the fragility of power and the costs of upheaval. The French Revolution, which erupted in 1789, was a distant but growing menace to the royal courts of Europe. By the time Marie-Amélie reached her teenage years, the guillotine had claimed the life of her aunt, Queen Marie Antoinette, and thrown France into chaos. These events had a profound impact on the young princess, who watched as her family's allies and relatives faced imprisonment, exile, or execution. The fall of the French monarchy was a cautionary tale that loomed large in her consciousness, shaping her view of power as both a privilege and a precarious responsibility. The revolution's effects were not confined to France. In Naples, The revolutionary tide inspired uprisings and unrest that threatened the stability of the Bourbon kingdom. In 1799, when Marie-Amélie was just 17, the Neapolitan Republic was briefly established, forcing her family to flee to Sicily under the protection of the British Navy. This period of exile marked a turning point in her life. The once stable world of her childhood was shattered, replaced by the uncertainty of life as a displaced royal. In Sicily, she witnessed her parents struggle to maintain their rule and adapt to a changing political landscape. Exile was a crucible that tempered Marie-Améli's character. Far from the opulence of Naples, she experienced a humbler, more grounded existence that deepened her understanding of the world and her place in it. Her faith, already a cornerstone of her identity, became an even more vital source of strength. She spent hours in prayer and reflection, finding solace in the rituals and teachings of the Catholic Church. This spiritual grounding would remain with her throughout her life, guiding her decisions and providing comfort during times of hardship. Despite the challenges of exile, Marie-Améli's family retained their royal dignity and aspirations. Her mother, ever the strategist, sought to secure advantageous marriages for her children, viewing them as a means of bolstering the family's position in Europe's shifting power dynamics. It was against this backdrop that Marie-Améli's path crossed with that of Louis-Philippe d'Orléans, a young man whose life mirrored her own in many ways. Louis-Philippe, the future king of the French, was also a child of revolution and exile, born into the House of Orleans, a cadet branch of the Bourbon dynasty. He had been swept up in the chaos of the French Revolution. His father, Philippe Égalité, had initially supported the revolution but was ultimately executed during the Reign of Terror. Louis-Philippe spent his formative years on the run, traveling across Europe and earning a reputation as a pragmatic and resourceful survivor. By the time he met Marie-Amélie, he had developed a vision for restoring his family's fortunes and carving out a role for himself in the post-revolutionary world. The meeting of Marie-Amélie and Louis-Philippe was more than a chance encounter. It was the convergence of two lives shaped by history's storms. Their shared experiences of loss and resilience created an immediate bond, and their marriage in 1809 was both a personal and political alliance. For Marie-Amélie, the union marked the beginning of a new chapter, one that would see her transition from a princess of Naples to a queen consort of France. For Louis-Philippe, it was a partnership that would provide him with the stability and support he needed to navigate the challenges ahead. Marie-Améli's early years, marked by privilege, exile, and adaptation, laid the foundation for her future role as queen. She emerged from this period with a profound understanding of the complexities of power and the importance of maintaining moral and emotional equilibrium in the face of adversity. These qualities would prove invaluable as she supported her husband's rise to the throne and guided her family through the trials of their shared destiny. As the 19th century progressed, the lessons Marie-Amélie had learned as a young princess would shape her approach to queenship, motherhood, and her enduring legacy. Her journey from the opulent courts of Naples to the uncertain life of exile and, eventually, to the heights of the French monarchy was a testament to her resilience and grace. This first chapter of her life sets the stage for the remarkable story of a woman whose quiet strength would leave an indelible mark on her family and her adopted nation. Marie-Amélie de Bourbon grew up in an era when the guillotine loomed large, not just as an instrument of death, but as a symbol of the revolutionary fervor that was sweeping Europe. For her family, the House of Bourbon, the French Revolution was not a distant political event. It was a personal catastrophe that struck at the heart of their identity. As the wave of revolution surged, it claimed the lives of many of her relatives, shattered the bonds of the old order, and left an indelible mark on the young princess. The execution of her aunt, Queen Marie Antoinette of France, was one of the defining tragedies of Marie-Améli's early life. Although they were separated by geography, the ties of blood and shared heritage connected them deeply. Marie-Amélie grew up hearing stories of her aunt's grace and strength, and the news of her brutal end in 1793 was both a personal and political shock. the image of Marie Antoinette ascending the scaffold, maintaining her dignity in the face of the jeering crowd, became a haunting emblem of the precariousness of royal privilege. The tragedy was compounded by the fate of Marie Antoinette's children. The young dauphin, Louis Charles, was imprisoned in the Temple and subjected to unimaginable suffering, eventually dying in captivity. His sister, Marie-Therese, was spared but endured years of isolation and trauma. These events served as a stark warning to royal families across Europe, including Marie-Amélie's own. In the courts of Naples and Palermo, whispers of revolution and fear of Republican sympathies grew louder, creating an atmosphere of tension and paranoia. For Marie-Amélie, these events were not just a distant narrative. They were the harbingers of upheaval that would soon touch her own life. The French Revolution inspired revolutionary movements across Europe, including in her homeland. In 1799, the revolutionary forces in Naples overthrew the Bourbon monarchy and declared the Neapolitan Republic. Her family was forced to flee, embarking on a perilous journey to the safety of Sicily. The exodus was a chaotic affair, marked by the desperate efforts of loyalists to protect their sovereigns and the sobering reality of a once mighty dynasty brought low. The experience of exile left an indelible mark on the young Marie-Amélie. The grandeur of royal life was replaced by the stark reality of displacement. Her family relied on the support of allies such as the British Navy, whose ships ferried them to safety. In Sicily, they found refuge but also faced the challenges of rebuilding their lives away from the comforts of their palace in Naples. It was during these years that Marie-Amélie's character began to crystallize. The resilience she witnessed in her parents, particularly her mother's unwavering determination to secure the family's future, became a source of inspiration. In exile, Marie-Amélie also encountered stories of other royal families displaced by the revolutionary tide. Among these were the Orleans family of France, who had experienced their own tragedies during the Revolution. The patriarch, Philippe Égalité, had initially supported the revolution, even voting for the execution of his cousin, King Louis XVI. However, his attempt to align with the revolutionary cause did not spare him from the guillotine, and he was executed in 1793. His son, Louis-Philippe d'Orléans, narrowly escaped a similar fate and spent years wandering across Europe, seeking refuge and purpose. Marie-Amélie and Louis-Philippe's paths first crossed during their shared exile. Both were young royals whose lives had been upended by the forces of history, and their encounters were marked by a mutual understanding of loss and resilience. While their relationship would not blossom into marriage until years later, these early meetings planted the seeds of a connection that would endure through the trials to come. The shadow of the guillotine extended beyond the physical violence of the revolution. It represented the ideological threat to monarchy itself. For Marie-Amélie, the events in France served as a stark reminder of the importance of adapting to a changing world. Her parents, particularly her mother Maria Carolina, were less inclined toward reform, clinging to the traditional notions of divine right and absolutism. However, Marie-Amélie began to develop a more pragmatic view, recognizing the need for compromise and the importance of earning the loyalty of the people. This pragmatism was evident in her approach to faith. While deeply devout, Marie-Amélie understood that religion could not simply be a tool of statecraft. It had to be a source of genuine moral guidance. Her Catholicism, tempered by the hardships of exile, became a cornerstone of her identity. She found solace in the rituals of the Church and drew strength from the teachings of forgiveness and redemption. These spiritual foundations would later shape her role as queen and as a mother, influencing the values she instilled in her children. As the Bourbon family navigated the complexities of exile, the political landscape of Europe continued to evolve. The fall of Napoleon in 1814 and the subsequent Congress of Vienna reshaped the continent, offering a glimmer of hope for displaced monarchies. For Marie-Amélie, these developments brought both opportunities and challenges. While her family regained their throne in Naples, the restoration was far from secure. The revolutionary ideals that had fueled the upheavals of the previous decades continued to smolder. threatening to reignite at any moment. The years in Sicily were a time of reflection and preparation for Marie-Amélie. She observed the fragility of power and the importance of cultivating resilience and adaptability. The lessons she learned during this period would later prove invaluable as she supported her husband, Louis-Philippe, in his own journey from exile to the throne of France. In this chapter of her life, the shadow of the guillotine was both a specter of past tragedies and a symbol of the challenges yet to come. It was a reminder of the precariousness of power and the need for grace under pressure, a lesson that Marie-Amélie would carry with her as she stepped onto the stage of history, not as a victim of revolution, but as a survivor who would quietly shape the destiny of her family and her adopted nation. Marie-Amélie de Bourbon's marriage to Louis-Philippe d'Orléans in 1809 was far more than a simple union of two aristocratic families. It was a partnership forged in the crucible of shared adversity, a bond rooted in mutual respect, and a turning point in both their lives. Together, they would navigate the treacherous political waters of post-revolutionary Europe, supporting each other as they sought to rebuild their lives and restore their place in history. By the time of their marriage, both Marie-Amélie and Louis-Philippe had already endured profound loss and upheaval. Marie-Amélie, exiled from her native Naples, had witnessed the fall of monarchies and the suffering of her relatives, including her Aunt Marie Antoinette. Louis-Philippe, too, was a child of revolution, his father executed during the Reign of Terror, and his family forced into exile. These shared experiences created a deep understanding between the two, as well as a shared determination to persevere. Their wedding took place in Palermo, Sicily, where Marie-Amelie's family had taken refuge. It was a modest ceremony by royal standards, reflecting the practical realities of their circumstances. Yet, despite the lack of grandeur, the marriage symbolized hope and resilience. It was a moment of renewal for both families, a chance to look toward the future after years of hardship. Marie-Amélie's qualities as a wife and partner became evident from the very beginning of their union. She possessed a calm and steadying presence that balanced Louis-Philippe's ambitious and pragmatic nature. While he dreamed of restoring his family's fortunes and charting a course back to power, she provided him with the emotional support and moral grounding he needed to pursue his goals with clarity and purpose. Their early years together were spent in relative obscurity, as Louis-Philippe focused on securing his family's position in a Europe still reeling from the Napoleonic Wars. They lived modestly, often moving between different locations to avoid political danger. Despite their uncertain circumstances, Marie-Amélie adapted with grace, creating a stable and nurturing environment for their growing family. She bore 10 children, each of whom would go on to play significant roles in European politics and society. Her dedication as a mother was matched only by her commitment to her husband's vision. Louis-Philippe's ambitions were not solely focused on personal gain. He believed that the monarchy could evolve to meet the demands of a changing world, unlike many of his contemporaries, who clung to the ideals of absolutism. Louis-Philippe sought to position himself as a modern and enlightened leader. Marie-Amélie, with her own pragmatic outlook, became his closest confidant and advisor. While she did not engage in politics directly, her influence on her husband's decisions was profound. One of the key elements of their partnership was their shared belief in the importance of family as the foundation of society. Marie-Amélie worked tirelessly to instill in her children the values of faith, discipline, and a sense of duty. She ensured that they received an education that combined traditional royal virtues with a modern understanding of the world. Through strategic marriages and alliances, she helped to secure their positions within Europe's complex web of dynasties, further strengthening the Orleans family's influence. The political landscape of Europe during this time was fraught with uncertainty. Napoleon's defeat in 1815 and the subsequent restoration of the Bourbon monarchy in France under Louis XVI presented both opportunities and challenges for Louis-Philippe and Marie-Amélie. While the Orleans family had been tainted by their association with the Revolution, Louis-Philippe's reputation as a moderate and pragmatic figure allowed him to navigate the shifting political tides. In 1830, The July Revolution erupted in France, marking a pivotal moment in their lives. The Bourbon monarchy, under the increasingly unpopular Charles X, was overthrown, creating a power vacuum that threatened to plunge the nation into chaos. Louis-Philippe, who had carefully cultivated his image as a champion of constitutional monarchy, was called upon to take the throne. His acceptance of the crown marked the beginning of the July Monarchy, a constitutional regime that sought to balance the ideals of the revolution with the stability of a monarchic system. Throughout this period, Marie-Amélie unwavering support was a cornerstone of Louis-Philippe's success. She understood the delicate nature of their position and worked tirelessly to ensure that their family presented a united and respectable image to the public. Her humility and piety endeared her to many, helping to bolster the legitimacy of her husband's rule. While Louis-Philippe engaged in the political maneuvering necessary to maintain his position, Marie-Amélie focused on building bridges between the monarchy and the people through her acts of charity and compassion. Their marriage was not without its challenges. The demands of ruling a nation and raising a large family often placed immense pressure on both Louis-Philippe and Marie-Amélie. Yet, their shared values and deep bond allowed them to weather these difficulties together. They complemented each other's strengths, with Louis-Philippe providing the vision and pragmatism needed to govern, and Marie-Amélie offering the emotional and moral support that grounded their efforts. Marie-Amélie's role as a partner extended beyond her personal relationship with Louis-Philippe. She was a queen consort who understood the importance of her position in shaping public perception. Her devotion to her family and her faith, coupled with her quiet strength, made her an ideal counterbalance to the political turbulence of her husband's reign. Together, they embodied a vision of monarchy that sought to adapt to the changing times, laying the groundwork for a legacy that would endure long after their time on the throne. As their journey continued, the challenges of governing a nation divided by revolution and tradition would test their resolve. Yet, the foundation of their marriage, a partnership built on trust, resilience, and a shared commitment to their family and their country, remained steadfast. This bond would serve as a source of strength in the years to come, as they faced the trials and triumphs of their reign together. Marie-Amélie de Bourbon's role as a mother was central to her identity, both as a queen and as a woman navigating the tumultuous political landscape of 19th century Europe. Her deep sense of responsibility and unwavering devotion to her children were not only a reflection of her personal values, but also a calculated effort to secure the future of the Orleans dynasty. In a time when monarchies were precariously balanced between tradition and modernity, Marie-Amélie's approach to motherhood became a cornerstone of her influence. Marie-Amélie and Louis-Philippe had 10 children, a large and vibrant family that became the pride and focus of her life. Each of her children represented both a personal legacy and a political asset, a fact not lost on the Queen. Her parenting style reflected her belief in the importance of discipline, faith, and education. She was deeply involved in their upbringing, ensuring that they were well prepared for the roles they would play in the shifting political landscape of Europe. From the moment her first child, Ferdinand Philippe, was born in 1810, Marie-Amélie embraced motherhood with the same dedication and grace that defined every aspect of her life. Ferdinand Philippe, known as the Duke of Orleans, was groomed from an early age to succeed his father. Marie-Amélie played a key role in shaping his character, instilling in him a sense of duty and an understanding of the complexities of leadership. Her efforts paid off, as Ferdinand Philippe grew into a charismatic and capable figure, beloved by the French people and seen as a symbol of the monarchy's future. Marie-Amélie's daughters were equally significant in her plans for the Orleans dynasty. Louise, the eldest daughter, married Leopold I, King of the Belgians, forging a vital alliance that strengthened the Orleans family's ties to one of Europe's emerging constitutional monarchies. This marriage was not only a personal triumph for Louise, but also a strategic success for Marie-Amélie, who had carefully guided her daughter's path to the Belgian throne. The Queen's other children, including François, Prince of Joinville, and Clementine, Princess of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, also played pivotal roles in the family's web of alliances. Marie-Amélie viewed their marriages and careers not just as individual milestones, but as pieces of a larger puzzle that would secure the Orleans dynasty's place in European politics. Her ability to navigate these complex relationships reflected her sharp political instincts and her deep commitment to her family's future. While Marie-Amélie was a devoted mother, her relationship with her children was not without its challenges. The demands of ruling a nation often kept her and Louis-Philippe preoccupied, leaving their children to navigate the pressures of public life on their own. Ferdinand Philippe, in particular, struggled with the weight of expectations placed upon him as the heir to the throne. Marie-Amélie did her best to support him, offering guidance and reassurance. But the pressures of his position would ultimately take a toll on his health and spirit. Tragedy struck the Orleans family in 1842 when Ferdinand Philippe died in a carriage accident at the age of 31. The loss of her eldest son was a devastating blow to Marie-Amélie, who had poured so much of her energy and hope into preparing him for leadership. His death not only left a void in the family but also destabilized the monarchy, which now had to grapple with the uncertainty of succession. Marie-Amélie's faith and resilience helped her endure this heartbreak, but it was a reminder of the fragility of even the most carefully laid plans. As a mother, Marie-Amélie was also deeply concerned with the moral and spiritual upbringing of her children. She ensured that they were raised with a strong foundation in the Catholic faith, emphasizing the importance of humility, charity, and a sense of responsibility toward their subjects. Her own piety served as a powerful example, and she encouraged her children to see their positions not as privileges but as opportunities to serve the greater good. Marie-Amélie's influence as a mother extended beyond her immediate family. Her dedication to her children and her ability to navigate the complexities of royal life made her a model for other women of her time. She demonstrated that motherhood could be both a personal and a political force, shaping not only the lives of her children but also the course of history. In the broader context of the July Monarchy, Marie-Amélie's role as a mother was instrumental in shaping the public perception of the Orleans family. Her image as a devoted and moral matriarch helped to humanize the monarchy, endearing her to the French people and reinforcing the legitimacy of Louis-Philippe's rule. At a time when monarchies across Europe were being challenged by revolutionary ideals, Marie-Amélie's emphasis on family values provided a stabilizing counterbalance to the political turbulence of the era. As the years passed, Marie-Amélie's children grew into their roles as members of a royal dynasty, each carrying forward the values and lessons instilled by their mother. While the July Monarchy would ultimately face its own challenges and downfall, the legacy of Marie-Amélie's motherhood endured. Her efforts to nurture a family grounded in faith, discipline, and duty left an indelible mark on the Orleans dynasty and the history of Europe. In this chapter of her life, Marie-Amélie's identity as a mother and a queen became intertwined. Her ability to balance her personal devotion to her children with her broader responsibilities to the monarchy demonstrated her remarkable strength and character. Through her love, guidance, and sacrifice, she helped to shape a generation of leaders who would carry the legacy of the Orleans family into the future. The path that led Marie-Amélie de Bourbon and her husband Louis-Philippe d'Orléans to the throne of France was neither direct nor assured. It was a journey marked by resilience, pragmatism, and a deep understanding of the changing political landscape of 19th century Europe. As the couple navigated the complexities of post-revolutionary France, Marie-Amélie's steadfast support and quiet influence became essential to Louis-Philippe's rise as the citizen king. In the wake of the Napoleonic Wars, Europe's political order was in flux. The Congress of Vienna in 1815 sought to restore monarchies toppled by revolution and war. But the ideals of liberty and equality ignited during the French Revolution could not be fully extinguished. In France, the Bourbon monarchy was restored under Louis XVI too, but the scars of revolution left the nation deeply divided. Tensions between royalists, republicans, and liberals simmered beneath the surface, creating an atmosphere of uncertainty and opportunity for those astute enough to navigate it. Louis-Philippe, whose family had been tarnished by his father's association with the revolution, positioned himself as a moderate figure. Unlike the ultra-royalists who sought to reinstate absolute monarchy, he advocated for a constitutional regime that would reconcile the monarchy with the principles of 1789. This approach, though risky, resonated with a growing segment of the French population that yearned for stability without the extremes of tyranny or anarchy. Marie-Amélie, deeply aware of the precariousness of their position, played a vital role in shaping and supporting her husband's strategy. Her experiences of exile and loss had taught her the value of adaptability, and she encouraged Louis-Philippe to balance his royal heritage with the need to embrace modernity. While he worked to build alliances and cultivate his public image, she focused on creating a family that exemplified the virtues of humility, piety, and service, qualities that would endear them to the people. The death of Charles X's son, the Duke of Berry, in 1820 further complicated the Bourbon monarchy's prospects. As the senior line of the Bourbons faced dwindling heirs, the Orleans family emerged as a potential alternative. Louis-Philippe's reputation as a liberal-minded and pragmatic leader made him a viable candidate for those disillusioned with the absolutism of Charles X. However, his ascent to power was far from guaranteed, and it required a delicate balance of ambition and caution. In 1830, France reached a tipping point. Charles X's increasingly reactionary policies, including the July ordinances that sought to restrict press freedoms and dissolve the Chamber of Deputies, ignited widespread unrest. The July Revolution erupted in Paris, as citizens took to the streets to demand change. Amid the chaos, the monarchy was overthrown, leaving a power vacuum that threatened to plunge the nation into anarchy. Louis-Philippe, who had long prepared for such a moment, stepped into the breach. His supporters framed him as the ideal compromise, a monarch who could unite the nation under a constitutional framework. On August 9, 1830, he was proclaimed King of the French, a title that symbolized his commitment to governing as a servant of the people rather than a ruler by divine right. The July Monarchy was born, heralding a new era for France and for Marie-Amélie. As queen consort, Marie-Amélie faced the daunting task of transitioning from a life of relative obscurity to the responsibilities of the throne. Her role required her to navigate the complexities of court life, maintain the monarchy's public image, and support her husband as he grappled with the challenges of ruling a deeply divided nation. It was a role she embraced with her characteristic grace and humility. Marie-Amélie understood that the legitimacy of the July monarchy depended not only on political strategy but also on the personal conduct of the royal family. She worked tirelessly to ensure that the Orleans dynasty projected an image of stability, morality, and accessibility, unlike the opulent and aloof courts of previous monarchs. The July monarchy sought to present itself as a government of the people. Marie-Amélie's dedication to charity and her genuine concern for the welfare of her subjects endeared her to many, helping to bolster the monarchy's popularity during its early years. However, the road to the throne was not without its sacrifices. The couple's rise to power had alienated some royalist factions, who viewed the Orleans family as usurpers. The Republicans, too, were wary of any monarchy, no matter how constitutional. This delicate balance of support and opposition required constant vigilance and negotiation. Marie-Amélie's ability to maintain her composure and focus on her family's broader goals was a crucial asset during this period of transition. One of Marie-Amélie's most significant contributions to her husband's reign was her emphasis on the importance of family as a symbol of national unity. She ensured that the Orleans children were visible and relatable to the public, presenting them as a new generation of royals who were in touch with the needs and aspirations of the people. This approach helped to humanize the monarchy and create a sense of connection between the royal family and their subjects. Despite their best efforts, the challenges of ruling a constitutional monarchy in a rapidly changing society were immense. The July monarchy faced economic crises, political unrest, and growing demands for greater democratic reforms. For Marie-Amélie, these challenges were a reminder of the lessons she had learned during her years of exile, that power was fleeting, and survival required constant adaptation. The years leading up to the July Monarchy were a testament to the resilience and determination of both Marie-Amélie and Louis-Philippe. Their journey from exile to the throne was marked by hardship, loss, and perseverance. Together, they had built a foundation for a new kind of monarchy, one that sought to balance tradition with progress, and authority with accountability. As the couple settled into their roles as king and queen, they knew that their greatest challenges lay ahead. The July Monarchy would be tested by the forces of revolution, reform, and reaction, and its survival would depend on their ability to navigate these trials with wisdom and grace. For Marie-Amélie, the road to the throne was not an endpoint but the beginning of a new chapter in her life, a chapter that would demand all the strength, faith, and resilience she had cultivated over the years. Marie-Amélie de Bourbon ascended to the position of queen consort in 1830 with the establishment of the July Monarchy. But her role extended far beyond the ceremonial. While her husband, Louis-Philippe I, ruled as the citizen king, she became the moral and emotional compass of the monarchy. Her influence, though exercised quietly and often behind the scenes, was pivotal in shaping the character and direction of her husband's reign. From the outset, Marie-Amélie understood the delicate nature of the July Monarchy. Unlike the absolutist regimes of the past, this constitutional monarchy relied on the support of a politically diverse and often divided populace. Louis-Philippe's legitimacy rested not only on his ability to govern effectively, but also on the personal image of the royal family. As queen, Marie-Amélie took on the responsibility of upholding the moral authority of the monarchy, ensuring that the Orleans dynasty projected an image of humility, decency, and service. Marie-Amélie's devout Catholic faith was at the core of her role as queen. She believed deeply in the principles of charity, compassion, and justice, and these values guided her actions and decisions. She championed numerous charitable causes, focusing on the welfare of the poor, the sick, and the marginalized. Hospitals, orphanages, and schools benefited from her patronage, and she worked tirelessly to improve the lives of those in need. Her efforts were not just symbolic gestures of royal benevolence. They were genuine acts of service that reflected her personal convictions. One of the most significant aspects of Marie-Amélie's queenship was her ability to influence her husband's policies and decisions. While she did not involve herself directly in matters of state, she served as Louis-Philippe's confidant and advisor. Her counsel was often grounded in her moral perspective, encouraging him to govern with moderation and a sense of responsibility toward the people. In moments of political crisis, her steadying presence provided Louis-Philippe with the clarity and resolve needed to navigate the challenges of his reign. The Queen's emphasis on moderation was particularly important during a time of political and social unrest. The July Monarchy was a fragile experiment in constitutional governance, and it faced constant pressure from both royalist and republican factions. Marie-Amélie urged her husband to avoid the extremes of reactionary or radical policies, advocating instead for a balanced approach that could maintain the monarchy's stability and legitimacy. Her perspective often acted as a counterweight to the more ambitious or controversial proposals of Louis-Philippe's advisors. Marie-Amélie's influence extended to court politics as well. The July Monarchy sought to distance itself from the opulence and excesses of previous regimes, and the Queen played a key role in setting the tone for this new era. The royal court under her guidance was marked by simplicity and propriety, reflecting her belief that monarchy should serve as a moral example rather than a display of extravagance. Her personal humility and piety resonated with many of the French people, helping to strengthen the monarchy's connection to its subjects. The Queen's role as a unifying figure within the royal family was equally important. With 10 children, the Orleans dynasty was a large and complex household, and Marie-Amélie worked tirelessly to maintain harmony and cohesion. She continued to instill in her children the values of faith, discipline, and service, preparing them for their roles as representatives of the monarchy. Her efforts to ensure that the family presented a united front were critical in bolstering the monarchy's public image. Despite her many successes, Marie-Amélie's tenure as queen was not without its challenges. The political climate of the July Monarchy was marked by constant tension and periodic unrest. Economic hardships, class divisions, and the lingering effects of the French Revolution created a volatile environment that tested the resilience of the monarchy. Marie-Amélie's ability to maintain her composure and focus on her duties was a source of strength for the royal family during these difficult times. The Queen's commitment to her faith occasionally put her at odds with the secularizing trends of the era. While she respected the principles of religious freedom enshrined in the constitutional monarchy, she remained deeply concerned about the moral direction of French society. Her advocacy for Catholic values and institutions sometimes drew criticism from those who viewed her as overly traditional, but she remained steadfast in her beliefs. One of the defining moments of Marie-Amélie's queenship came in 1832 when a cholera epidemic swept through Paris, claiming thousands of lives. The Queen's response to the crisis was marked by compassion and courage. She supported efforts to care for the sick, provided funding for medical facilities, and personally visited hospitals to offer comfort to patients and their families. Her actions during the epidemic earned her widespread admiration, reinforcing her image as a compassionate and dedicated queen. As the years passed, the challenges facing the July Monarchy grew more pronounced. The economic disparities between the wealthy and the working class fueled growing dissatisfaction, and revolutionary sentiments began to resurface. For Marie-Amélie, these developments were a sobering reminder of the fragility of power and the lessons of the past. She continued to urge her husband to govern with prudence and to prioritize the needs of the people. But the forces of unrest proved difficult to contain. By the 1840s, the cracks in the July Monarchy were becoming increasingly apparent. The death of their eldest son, Ferdinand Philippe, in 1842 was a devastating personal loss for Marie-Amélie and Louis-Philippe, as well as a significant blow to the monarchy's future prospects. Ferdinand Philippe had been widely regarded as a capable and charismatic heir, and his death left a void that was difficult to fill. For Marie-Amélie, the tragedy was a poignant reminder of the sacrifices and uncertainties of royal life. Marie-Amélie's tenure as queen was ultimately defined by her unwavering commitment to her family, her faith, and her people. She brought to the July Monarchy a sense of dignity, morality, and compassion that helped to stabilize the regime during its most challenging years. While her influence was often subtle and behind the scenes, it was nonetheless profound, shaping the character of the monarchy and the legacy of the Orleans dynasty. As the July Monarchy approached its final days, Marie-Amélie's strength and resilience would be tested once again. The Revolution of 1848 would bring an end to their reign, forcing the royal family into exile and marking the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. Yet, even in the face of adversity, Marie-Amélie's legacy as a queen of conscience and compassion would endure, a testament to her enduring impact on the history of France. By the mid-1840s, the July Monarchy of Louis-Philippe I and Marie-Amélie de Bourbon was under increasing strain. What had begun as a hopeful compromise between monarchy and modernity was now fraught with challenges. Economic difficulties, political unrest, and social inequality cast long shadows over the regime. For Marie-Amélie, these years were a test of her faith, resilience, and ability to hold her family together as the storm clouds of revolution gathered. The economic situation in France during the 1840s was dire for much of the population. Agricultural failures led to food shortages, and industrial workers faced harsh conditions in the factories. The gap between the wealthy elite and the struggling masses grew wider, fueling resentment and unrest. For Marie-Amélie, who had always emphasized the moral responsibilities of leadership, the suffering of the people was deeply troubling. She encouraged her husband to address the grievances of the lower classes, but the structural issues facing the nation were complex and resistant to quick fixes. At the same time, the political climate became increasingly volatile. The July Monarchy was caught between two opposing forces: the Royalists, who viewed Louis-Philippe as a usurper and longed for the return of the senior Bourbon line, and the Republicans, who sought to abolish the monarchy altogether. Both groups saw the regime as illegitimate, and their persistent opposition undermined the monarchy's stability. Within this fraught environment, Louis-Philippe leaned heavily on Marie-Amélie's counsel and support. Her ability to remain calm and focused provided him with a measure of stability amidst the growing chaos. Marie-Amélie's role during this turbulent period extended beyond the political sphere. As the queen consort, she was acutely aware of the importance of public perception. She worked tirelessly to maintain the image of the royal family as virtuous and relatable, hoping to strengthen their connection with the French people. Her dedication to charity and her visible acts of compassion remained a source of goodwill, even as criticism of the monarchy mounted. However, she also understood that goodwill alone would not be enough to save the regime. The Queen's concern for her family's unity became even more pronounced during these years. With 10 children, each navigating their own paths within the political and social dynamics of Europe, Marie-Amélie faced the challenge of balancing their individual ambitions with the needs of the dynasty. The death of her eldest son, Ferdinand Philippe, in 1842 had left a deep void in the family and the monarchy. His charisma and popularity had been a crucial asset to the regime, and his absence was keenly felt. In the wake of Ferdinand Philippe's death, Marie-Amélie redoubled her efforts to guide and support her remaining children. Her second son, Louis, Duke of Nemours, became the heir apparent, but he lacked the same level of public appeal as his elder brother. The Queen worked to prepare him for the responsibilities of leadership, instilling in him the values of duty and service that had always been central to her own life. At the same time, she sought to strengthen the family's ties to other European monarchies through strategic marriages, ensuring that the Orleans dynasty remained connected to the broader network of royal alliances. As the Queen devoted herself to her family and her charitable endeavors, the political situation in France continued to deteriorate. Public discontent with the monarchy reached new heights, fueled by the perception that Louis-Philippe was out of touch with the needs of ordinary citizens. The king's cautious and often indecisive approach to governance further eroded confidence in his leadership. Marie-Amélie, who had always urged her husband to prioritize moderation and compassion, found herself increasingly powerless to influence the course of events. The revolutionary sentiment that had smoldered since the French Revolution now threatened to ignite once again. In 1847, a series of political scandals and financial crises exacerbated public frustration with the monarchy. The opposition, emboldened by the regime's weaknesses, organized a campaign of political banquets to rally support for reform. These gatherings, which combined social and political elements, became a focal point for Republican agitation and a direct challenge to the monarchy's authority. For Marie-Amélie, the rising tide of unrest was a painful reminder of the events that had shaped her early life. The specter of revolution, which had haunted her family during the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars, now loomed over her own reign as queen. She prayed fervently for guidance and strength, drawing on her deep faith to sustain her through these uncertain times. At the same time, she sought to protect her family from the growing dangers, urging her children to remain vigilant and united. By early 1848, the tension in France had reached a breaking point. The monarchy's inability to address the grievances of the people, combined with widespread disillusionment with Louis-Philippe's leadership, created a volatile situation. For Marie-Amélie, the gathering storm was both a personal and a political crisis. She faced the prospect of losing not only the throne but also the stability and security she had worked so hard to build for her family. Despite the mounting challenges, Marie-Amélie remained steadfast in her commitment to her role as queen and matriarch. She continued to provide emotional support to her husband, who was increasingly isolated and under pressure from all sides. Her quiet strength and unwavering faith served as a beacon of hope for those around her, even as the storm clouds of revolution threatened to engulf the monarchy. As the year progressed, it became clear that the July Monarchy was nearing its end. The forces of history, which had shaped Marie-Amélie's life from the beginning, were once again at work, challenging her resilience and testing her resolve. The revolution that would ultimately overthrow the regime was just over the horizon. But for Marie-Amélie, the struggle to uphold her family's legacy and values would continue, no matter the outcome. The Revolution of 1848 descended upon France like a tempest, sweeping away the July Monarchy and plunging the Orleans dynasty into chaos. For Marie-Amélie de Bourbon, it was a devastating culmination of years of mounting tension. The upheaval was not just a political catastrophe. It was a deeply personal blow that tested her faith, resilience, and ability to protect her family in the face of insurmountable odds. By February 1848, dissatisfaction with Louis-Philippe's government had reached a boiling point. The political banquets, originally designed as a forum for reformist ideas, had grown into a full-scale challenge to the monarchy. Protests erupted in Paris, with demands for electoral reform and an end to perceived corruption and incompetence. The king, whose cautious nature had once been a strength, now seemed paralyzed by indecision. For Marie-Amélie, these events were an agonizing reminder of the fragility of power. On February 22nd, demonstrations in Paris escalated into violent clashes between citizens and soldiers. The situation spiraled out of control, with barricades rising in the streets and revolutionaries calling for the abdication of Louis-Philippe. In the face of overwhelming pressure, the king realized that his position was untenable. On February 24th, he abdicated in favor of his grandson, Philippe, Count of Paris, in a last-ditch attempt to preserve the monarchy. However, the gesture was in vain. The Second Republic was proclaimed, and the royal family was forced to flee. For Marie-Amélie, the flight from Paris was a harrowing ordeal. As the revolutionaries gained control of the city, the queen and her family sought refuge at the Château de Saint-Cloud, just outside the capital. But even there, safety was fleeting. The threat of capture or worse loomed large, and the family made the difficult decision to leave France entirely. Marie-Amélie's priority was clear: to protect her children and ensure their survival. The journey into exile was fraught with danger and humiliation. Disguised as ordinary citizens, the royal family traveled in secret, evading revolutionary forces and relying on the loyalty of a few trusted allies. For Marie-Amélie, who had endured exile once before during her youth, the experience was both familiar and profoundly painful. The loss of the throne was a bitter reminder of the precariousness of royal life, but it was the uncertainty of the future that weighed most heavily on her. Eventually, the family reached England, where they were granted asylum by Queen Victoria, the British monarch, who admired Marie-Amélie's dignity and strength, welcomed the exiled royals to Claremont House in Surrey. For Marie-Amélie, the sanctuary provided by England was a source of immense relief, but it was also the beginning of a new chapter filled with challenges and reflection. Life in exile was a stark contrast to the splendor of the French court. The family lived modestly, their financial resources severely diminished by the loss of the monarchy. Despite these hardships, Marie-Amélie maintained her characteristic grace and composure. She focused on creating a stable and nurturing environment for her family, drawing on her deep faith to guide her through this period of uncertainty. Marie-Amélie's role as the matriarch of the Orleans family became even more pronounced during their exile. She worked tirelessly to preserve the unity and morale of her children and grandchildren, who were now scattered across Europe. Her letters to her family members were filled with words of encouragement, advice, and spiritual guidance, reflecting her unwavering commitment to their well-being. In exile, Marie-Amélie also had the opportunity to reflect on the events that had led to the fall of the July Monarchy. She recognized the limitations of their governance and the challenges of reconciling monarchy with the demands of a changing society. However, she remained steadfast in her belief in the values of faith, family, and service that had guided her life. For her, The loss of the throne did not diminish the importance of these principles. Rather, it reinforced their enduring significance. Despite the hardships of exile, Marie-Amélie found solace in her faith. She devoted herself to prayer and acts of charity, continuing the work that had been a hallmark of her queenship. Her humility and compassion earned her the admiration of those around her, including many in England who came to know her during her time at Claremont House. As the years passed, Marie-Amélie witnessed the transformation of Europe's political landscape. The revolutionary fervor of 1848 had reshaped the continent, toppling monarchies and challenging the old order. Yet, amid these changes, she remained a symbol of resilience and grace, embodying the enduring values of the Orleans dynasty. The revolution and subsequent exile were defining moments in Marie-Amélie's life, testing her strength and resolve in ways she could never have imagined. Though she had lost the throne, she retained her dignity, her faith, and her unwavering commitment to her family. For Marie-Amélie, the challenges of exile were not an end but a continuation of her lifelong journey, a journey marked by resilience, compassion, and an unshakable belief in the power of love and duty. The exile of Marie-Amélie de Bourbon and her family to England marked the beginning of a quieter but no less significant chapter in her life. Claremont House in Surrey, their refuge, became a sanctuary for the exiled royals, a place where they sought to rebuild their lives after the tumultuous fall of the July Monarchy. For Marie-Amélie, this period was defined by her unwavering devotion to her family, her enduring faith, and her reflections on the meaning of monarchy and legacy. Claremont House, while far from the grandeur of the Tuileries Palace, offered the Orleans family a semblance of stability. The estate, gifted to the family by Queen Victoria, was a gracious gesture of solidarity that spoke to the mutual respect between the British monarch and Marie-Amélie. Despite the loss of her royal status, Marie-Amélie retained her dignity and grace, qualities that endeared her to those around her and reinforced her position as the matriarch of the Orleans dynasty. Marie-Amélie's first priority in exile was her family. The loss of the throne and the scattering of her children across Europe had created a deep sense of dislocation. At Claremont, she worked tirelessly to maintain the bonds of love and unity that had always been central to her life. She encouraged her children to remain connected, supporting them through their personal and political challenges. Her letters, filled with words of encouragement and advice, became a lifeline for her scattered family. For Marie-Amélie, exile was also a time of reflection. She spent hours in prayer and contemplation, seeking solace in her Catholic faith. The loss of the throne, while painful, deepened her understanding of the transient nature of power and the enduring value of faith and family. She viewed her circumstances not as a punishment but as a test of her resilience and commitment to her principles. Despite her personal losses, Marie-Amélie remained active in charitable work, continuing the legacy of compassion that had defined her queenship. She supported local charities in Surrey and maintained connections with Catholic institutions across Europe. Her acts of kindness and generosity endeared her to the local community, and she became a respected figure in her adopted homeland. Marie-Amélie also took great pride in the achievements of her children and grandchildren. The Orleans family, despite their exile, continued to play a significant role in European politics and society. Her eldest surviving son, Louis, Duke of Nemours, worked tirelessly to maintain the family's connections and influence. Her daughters, through their marriages, forged alliances with some of Europe's most prominent royal houses, ensuring that the Orleans name remained relevant. The political changes sweeping Europe during the 1850s and 1860s provided both challenges and opportunities for the exiled family. The rise of Napoleon III and the establishment of the Second Empire in France made the prospect of returning to power increasingly remote. However, Marie-Amélie remained hopeful that the values of constitutional monarchy and moderation that she and Louis-Philippe had championed would one day find favor again. As the years passed, Marie-Amélie's health began to decline, but her spirit remained unshaken. She continued to serve as a source of wisdom and strength for her family, guiding them with the same quiet authority that had defined her life. Her enduring faith provided her with a sense of peace, even as she faced the challenges of old age and the uncertainties of exile. Marie-Amélie's reflections on her life were marked by a sense of gratitude for the blessings she had received. Despite the hardships she had endured, she found solace in the love of her family and the knowledge that she had lived a life of purpose and integrity. For her, the legacy of the Orleans dynasty was not defined by the loss of the throne but by the values of service, compassion, and resilience that she had worked so hard to instill in her children and grandchildren. In 1866, at the age of 83, Marie-Amélie passed away at Claremont House. Her death marked the end of an era, but her legacy endured through her family and the values she had championed throughout her life. For the Orleans dynasty, she remained a symbol of grace and strength, a queen whose quiet influence had shaped their destiny and whose memory would inspire generations to come. Marie-Amélie's life in exile was a testament to her resilience and faith. She faced the loss of the throne and the challenges of displacement with dignity and determination, transforming her circumstances into an opportunity to strengthen her family and live out her values. In her quiet way, she demonstrated that true greatness is not measured by power or status, but by the ability to remain steadfast in the face of adversity, to nurture those we love, and to leave behind a legacy of compassion and integrity. The final years of Marie-Amélie de Bourbon's life were a period of reflection, as she considered the legacy of her family and her own contributions to their enduring story. Though exile had stripped her of a throne, it had not diminished the values she had worked tirelessly to instill: faith, resilience, and a commitment to service. As she watched her children and grandchildren navigate the complexities of European politics and society, she recognized the enduring influence of her guidance and character. From her sanctuary at Claremont House, Marie-Amélie witnessed the transformation of Europe during the mid-19th century. The revolutions of 1848, which had uprooted her family, had left a profound mark on the continent, ushering in new political ideologies and challenging the traditional monarchies. Yet, even as republicanism and nationalism rose to prominence, Marie-Amélie believed in the enduring value of constitutional monarchy as a stabilizing force. Her reflections on the July Monarchy, her husband's reign, and their eventual exile revealed a deep understanding of the challenges inherent in balancing tradition with progress. One of the Queen's greatest sources of pride was her family. Despite the upheavals they had faced, the Orleans dynasty remained a significant presence in European affairs. Her sons and daughters, many of whom had married into other royal houses, carried forward her values and principles. The marriages of her daughters to monarchs and influential nobles ensured that the family retained a network of alliances across Europe. Her son Louis, Duke of Nemours, emerged as a steadfast leader within the family, providing continuity and stability after the loss of his father and older brother. Marie-Amélie's grandchildren also bore the fruits of her influence. She took great joy in their achievements, recognizing in them the same resilience and determination that had defined her own life. Among her most prominent grandchildren was Philippe, Count of Paris, who became the head of the Orleans family after the death of his father. Ferdinand Philippe, though his prospects of reclaiming the French throne remained uncertain, Marie-Amélie encouraged him to embody the virtues of moderation and service that had characterized the July Monarchy. As a devout Catholic, Marie-Amélie found solace in her faith during her final years. The loss of her husband, Louis-Philippe, in 1850 had been a profound blow, but her belief in the promise of eternal life sustained her. She continued to pray daily, seeking strength and guidance as she navigated the challenges of old age and the responsibilities of her role as matriarch of the Orleans dynasty. Her faith also informed her reflections on her life and her place in history, providing her with a sense of purpose and fulfillment. Marie-Amélie's legacy extended beyond her family. Her emphasis on charity and compassion had left an indelible mark on the communities she touched. Even in exile, she remained committed to serving others, supporting local charities in England and maintaining connections with Catholic institutions across Europe. Her acts of kindness and generosity had earned her the respect and admiration of those who knew her, cementing her reputation as a queen of conscience and compassion. In her private moments, Marie-Amélie often reflected on the lessons of her life. She had witnessed the fall of monarchies, the rise of revolutions, and the shifting tides of European politics. Through it all, she had remained steadfast in her values, adapting to change without compromising her principles. Her life was a testament to the enduring power of grace and resilience, qualities that had allowed her to navigate the challenges of exile and loss with dignity. As her health began to decline, Marie-Amélie prepared for the inevitable with the same composure and faith that had defined her life. She surrounded herself with her family, finding comfort in their presence and the knowledge that her legacy would endure through them. Her final days at Claremont House were marked by peace and reflection, a fitting conclusion to a life of purpose and service. Marie-Amélie passed away on March 24, 1866. At the age of 83, her death marked the end of an era, but her influence continued to resonate within her family and beyond. For the Orleans dynasty, she remained a symbol of grace and strength, a queen who had navigated the trials of her life with dignity and compassion. Her legacy, rooted in the values of faith, family, and service, was a source of inspiration for her descendants and a testament to her enduring impact on history. In the years following her death, Marie-Amélie's life was celebrated as a model of quiet leadership and moral integrity. Historians and admirers alike recognized her role in shaping the character of the July Monarchy and preserving the unity of the Orleans family during their exile. Her story, though often overshadowed by the political drama of her time, stood as a reminder of the enduring power of resilience, faith, and the quiet strength of those who lead from behind the scenes. Marie-Amélie de Bourbon's legacy was not measured in titles or territories, but in the values she upheld and the lives she touched. Her journey, from a princess of Naples to an exiled queen, was a testament to the enduring power of character in the face of adversity. In her life and her legacy, she embodied the timeless virtues of grace, humility, and love, leaving an indelible mark on her family and the world they inhabited. Marie-Amélie de Bourbon's life came to symbolize the power of quiet, steadfast leadership in an era marked by revolution, upheaval, and transformation. Her journey, from a princess of Naples to the exiled queen consort of France, reflected a resilience and grace that transcended the rise and fall of dynasties. As her story draws to a close, the lessons of her life remain clear: that true strength lies not in dominance, but in the ability to adapt, endure, and inspire. Throughout her life, Marie-Amélie was a woman of profound faith and unwavering values. She faced the guillotine's shadow during the French Revolution, endured the trials of exile, and witnessed the loss of her throne. Yet, she remained unshaken in her belief in the virtues of family, compassion, and duty. Her role as the matriarch of the Orleans dynasty was not confined to the gilded halls of a palace. It extended into the everyday lives of her children, grandchildren, and those she served through her acts of charity. As queen consort during the July Monarchy, Marie-Amélie played a vital yet understated role in her husband's reign, while Louis-Philippe I governed as the citizen king. It was Marie-Amélie who provided the moral foundation and emotional stability that allowed the monarchy to endure as long as it did. She tempered his decisions with her wisdom, encouraged moderation in times of unrest, and reminded him of the monarchy's responsibility to the people. Her influence, though exercised quietly, was instrumental in shaping the character of the July Monarchy and its attempt to reconcile tradition with progress. The fall of the July Monarchy and the family's subsequent exile to England tested Marie-Amélie's resilience once again. Yet, even in exile, she refused to see herself as defeated. At Claremont House, she continued to lead her family with the same dignity and devotion that had defined her time on the throne. She ensured that her children and grandchildren remained united, instilling in them the values of faith, service, and resilience that had guided her own life. Marie-Amélie's death in 1866 marked the end of a life lived with purpose and integrity, but her legacy continued to echo through the generations. The Orleans dynasty, though no longer reigning, retained a significant place in European history, thanks in no small part to her efforts to preserve its unity and moral strength. Her descendants carried forward her ideals, becoming prominent figures in politics, philanthropy, and the arts, for historians and admirers alike. Marie-Amélie's life offers a compelling example of leadership that does not rely on spectacle or force. Her power lay in her ability to inspire those around her through her actions, her steadfast commitment to her principles, and her deep understanding of the human condition. In a world often dominated by the loud and the forceful, her quiet strength stands as a testament to the enduring impact of humility, grace, and perseverance. Marie-Amélie's story reminds us that history is shaped not only by those who wield power openly, but also by those who lead with quiet determination behind the scenes. Her legacy, rooted in the timeless virtues of faith, family, and compassion, serves as a source of inspiration for generations to come. As we reflect on her life, we are reminded of the profound influence that a single individual, guided by steadfast values, can have on the course of history. In the end, Marie-Amélie de Bourbon's life was not defined by the throne she lost, but by the strength she displayed in the face of adversity and the love she poured into her family and her people. She was a queen not of opulence or dominion, but of conscience and care, a legacy that continues to shine as a beacon of quiet power and enduring grace.